Hey, Dr. Mack here. Wanted to talk a little bit about concussion symptoms. And one of the things that happens with concussion symptoms is that sometimes they don't present immediately. Sometimes it takes a few weeks or even sometimes more to present themselves. And here's why. When you get a concussion and you have injury to the brain, what happens is these neural pathways or these connections in the brain, they start to break down and they become weaker. So our connections in these certain neural pathways, which are like roads in the brain, become a little weaker. And what happens is information goes slower. And so now information is processed slower. An example of this is light. So people get light sensitive, sometimes not immediately, but a few weeks or even months afterwards, after these concussions, they develop because as these pathways break down, everybody farther down the line starts to break down as well. So you start to get really a lot of different neurons that start to lose their connectivity, not just the injured area, but the places they connect to. So we start to have effects downstream that really have an impact on people's functionality and therefore symptoms. So if light comes in and it's not processed quickly, we can't constrict our pupils fast enough, then light becomes very sensitive to us and it fatigues our brain because too much stimulation from light isn't necessarily great for our brain. That's one example. Sound is another example. Busy environments, another example. These things that we can't process or keep up with very quickly, they really become problematic for us and create symptoms. In fact, what happens too over time is that we form these compensatory pathways in the brain. And so we form these other routes, like a GPS rerouting, a pathway or directions. And so these directions become a little skewed, they become slower. And now we're not really getting accurate information as quickly to the next target as needed. And so we get symptoms from that. So these new pathways, they create symptoms, even though they're there to try to help, because we can't use the original pathway. It's not efficient enough. So we have to use these other pathways that we form. And they take a little time to be created. So this is where some of these symptoms come on weeks or even months later. What we can do, though, is we can locate to treat this, we can locate where the original pathway that's affected is. Once we find that, we can then develop treatments to stimulate, create more connections in the brain in a process called neuroplasticity that then creates faster, efficient communication along that pathway, which then allows the brain to remove these extra rerouted paths in a process called synaptic arborization, where it really cleaves them off. It just, if you don't use it, you lose it. And we get to return to our normal pathway. So now when light or sound and other types of things come in, we can really dampen that or process it quickly enough so it doesn't create symptoms. So just a little explanation of why symptoms often take a little while to become really apparent. Hope that helps.